What if Jon Snow was born a girl? Imagine a Westeros where one tiny twist of fate changes everything. Jon Snow is born a girl. In this alternate timeline, all the events leading up to Robert's rebellion remain exactly the same. The kidnapping of Lyanna Stark, the war, the fall of the Targaryens, except for one crucial detail at the very end. At the Tower of Joy, Lyanna Stark gives birth not to a son, but to a daughter. This single change will send profound ripples through the entire story of Game of Thrones. How would a female Jon, let's call her Lyanna Snow, navigate the brutal patriarchal world of Westeros? How would her presence alter the relationships in House Stark, the politics of the North, and even the outcome of the war for the Iron Throne? In this comprehensive exploration, we'll follow Lyanna Snow's journey step by step through multiple characters' eyes to see how her life diverges from Jon's and what new destiny awaits her. The point of divergence is singular and absolute. Lyanna Stark's child is a girl, but everything else up to that moment remains the same. From that moment on, the dominoes begin to fall differently. This scenario will highlight themes of gender and power, the plight of a highborn bastard girl in Westeros, intricate courtly politics, and the emotional struggles of a child born to a secret destiny. Let us begin at the fateful birth that starts our alternate history. Our story opens at the Tower of Joy in the year 283 AC, at the very end of Robert's rebellion. Here, Eddard Stark finds his sister Lyanna Stark dying in a bed of blood after childbirth. In her last moments, Lyanna presses a baby into Ned's arms, a newborn girl, healthy and wailing. "Promise me, Ned," Lyanna whispers. Even in her fever and pain, Ned's sister makes him swear to protect this child. Ned Stark, honorable to a fault, gives his word. The fear fades from Lyanna's eyes as she hears his promise, and she dies with a sad smile, black petals of the blue winter roses slipping from her fingers. Ned is swallowed by grief. He holds his sister's lifeless hand until Howland Reed, the little Crannog man who survived the battle, gently takes Lyanna's hand from Ned's grasp. Only then does Ned awaken to the crying infant wrapped in Lyanna's cloak. This girl is Rhaegar Targaryen's daughter, a living symbol of the love, or scandal, that ignited a war. Robert Baratheon's hatred for the Targaryens is well known. He would kill this child in an eye blink if he knew. Ned realizes the enormity of what Lyanna has asked. He must conceal the girl's identity to save her life. Ned makes a swift, anguished decision. The baby will not die today. He resolves to raise the girl as his own illicit daughter. It is the only way to honor Lyanna's wish and protect her child from Robert's wrath. So Ned Stark, the honorable Lord of Winterfell, commits to a lifelong lie. He gives the infant a name that night before they depart the tower. Gazing down at her, so tiny and yet so strong after such a harrowing birth, Ned whispers, "Lyanna. Lyanna Snow." The name Lyanna is a subtle tribute to Lyanna, similar in sound, and it has a musical lilt that even recalls Rhaegar's harp. The surname Snow marks her unmistakably as a bastard of the North. Ned knows that presenting her as a common bastard born during the war is the only way to explain her existence. Carrying baby Lyanna, Ned leaves the Tower of Joy. He hides the blood-stained birthbed and any evidence of the child's parentage. The fallen Kingsguard swordsmen outside, including the legendary Sir Arthur Dayne, are given honorable burials. Ned sends Howland Reed home to Greywater Watch with heartfelt thanks and a request: keep silent about what transpired here. Only Ned and Howland know the truth of Lyanna's parentage. This terrible secret, Rhaegar and Lyanna's child, must never leave their lips. On the journey home, Ned has to account for this infant. When he meets loyal friends of his house, he allows them to believe the child is his own bastard from the war. Some assume Ned fell to temptation while off fighting, and this baby is the result. In reality, Ned endures the dishonor silently to keep Lyanna safe. He even tells a half-truth to his friend Robert Baratheon when they reunite after the war's end. Ned implies the mother was a common girl of no significance. He uses the name Willa, a fisherman's daughter, as he did in canon. Robert, in the flush of victory and already reveling in other women, barely pays attention. He doesn't even ask many questions about Ned's supposed dalliance. To Robert, bastards are nothing new. He has a few of his own. Little does he know that this particular child has Targaryen blood. By the time Ned returns north to Winterfell, he has steeled himself for the hardest part of all, facing his wife, Catelyn Tully Stark, with an infant in arms. The war kept Ned and Catelyn apart for more than a year, and during that time Catelyn gave birth to their son Robb. Now Ned comes home not only with Robert's victory, but with a baby girl who is not Catelyn's. When Ned presents baby Lyra to his wife, Catelyn is stunned and devastated. The honorable Ned Stark she married appears to have broken his vows. In truth, Ned did not stray, but he cannot explain without risking Lyra's life. Bound by his promise, Ned simply states that Lyra's mother is someone he met on campaign, and that the child is his bastard. Catelyn's heart turns to ice. A bastard child born of her husband's infidelity is a public humiliation for her as much as him. In that era and culture, highborn men keeping a single bastard is not entirely unusual, but for Ned Stark, who was revered for his honor, it is deeply shocking. Catelyn tries to swallow her anger and pain. After all, Ned is just back from a brutal war, and her own beloved father and brother died in that war. She understands grief and loneliness could lead to mistakes, but the fact that Ned brought the child home to raise alongside their trueborn son is an insult she hadn't expected. The baby being a girl, however, is one small relief to Catelyn. At least this infant won't ever claim Winterfell. Unlike a male bastard who might one day be seen as a competitor to her son's inheritance, a daughter born out of wedlock is far less of a threat in terms of succession. House Stark's seat and titles can only pass to a trueborn son, or, failing sons, to daughters like Sansa or Arya, but not to an illegitimate girl. Lady Catelyn reminds herself of this fact whenever jealousy or fear gnaws at her. Lyra Snow might steal Ned's affection and the spotlight in their household, but she cannot steal Robb's birthright. In Catelyn's eyes, that makes this bitter medicine slightly easier to tolerate than if the bastard were a boy. And so, Ned's lie becomes reality. The baby is nursed and raised at Winterfell under Ned's protection. He treats Lyra as his own blood, which indeed she is, doting on her quietly and ensuring she never goes without. Only a handful of people suspect there might be more to the story. Perhaps Maester Luwin guesses something doesn't add up, or Ned's older sister in spirit, Old Nan, notices the baby's Stark-like features. But none know the truth. Lyra Snow is officially recorded as Eddard Stark's bastard daughter, born in 283 AC, mother unknown, or vaguely referred to as Willa of the South. The Northmen chuckle that Ned Stark must have had a moment of folly during the war, and they move on. After all, many lords came back with bastard children, or camp followers. Robert Baratheon alone sired numerous bastard offspring. If anything, some are surprised Ned didn't claim a son, but they suppose the old gods had a sense of humor, giving him a daughter instead. The bastard of Winterfell, Lyra Snow, grows up within the grey stone walls of Winterfell, surrounded by Stark children yet set apart by her surname. As a child, she doesn't fully understand why she is different. She just knows that Lady Catelyn, the mistress of Winterfell, is cool and distant toward her. Catelyn does her duty. She sees to it that Lyra is fed, clothed, and treated politely, but there is no motherly warmth in her interactions. Unlike with her own children, Robb, Sansa, Arya, Bran, and baby Rickon, Catelyn never cuddles Lyra or brushes her hair or sings to her. Instead, she maintains a careful civil distance. Young Lyra can sense Lady Stark's resentment, even if she cannot name it. Ned Stark, on the other hand, is a loving father. In his reserved way, he makes a point to include Lyra in family events and to acknowledge her as his blood. This is crucial, because in the North, the word of the Lord is all that stands between a bastard and scorn. Ned's public acknowledgement protects Lyra from being completely ostracized. However, Ned is also careful not to show too much favor. He doesn't want to provoke his wife further or give anyone cause to gossip that he loves his bastard more than his trueborns. It's a delicate balance. In practice, Ned is affectionate but somewhat solemn with Lyra. He often remarks that she has the wolf blood of the Starks, a wildness in her reminiscent of Lyanna. Indeed, as Lyra grows, she looks very much like Lyanna Stark. She has the long face, high cheekbones, and gray eyes of the Starks, with dark brown hair that tumbles and tangles. Old Man sometimes gasps when Lyra rushes by, thinking for a split second that young Lady Lyanna's ghost walks again. Ned, too, in his private thoughts, is struck by the resemblance. Lyanna might have carried a sword, if my Lord Father had allowed it. You remind me of her sometimes, Lyra, he muses silently, recalling how he once said the same to Arya. When Lyra smiles or laughs, Ned sees his lost sister's fiery spirit flicker in the girl's eyes. It is equal parts comforting and haunting. Growing up alongside the true-born Stark children, Lyra finds her place in the sibling pack. She and Robb Stark, Catelyn's eldest, the heir to Winterfell, are close in age. Robb is about a year older, As toddlers, they play together innocently. Robb, a friendly and kind boy like his father, doesn't understand why his mother seems to disapprove when he drags Lyra along by the hand to show her his toys. Catelyn, to her credit, never forbids the Stark children from associating with Lyra. She won't be openly cruel, but she does subtly influence their perceptions. From an early age, Sansa and Bran are taught proper manners, which includes not calling Lyra sister. She is never referred to as Lady Stark, of course. Arya, ever the rebel, couldn't care less about decorum. She does call Lyra sister and treats her as one. In fact, Arya and Lyra form the closest bond. Arya is 3 years younger, but as she grows, she idolizes her older bastard sister even more than she looks up to her sister Sansa. Where Sansa is ladylike, dutiful, and everything Arya feels she is not, Lyra is a different kind of role model. She's spirited, adventurous, and not overly concerned with traditional ladies' expectations. Lyra occupies a unique social position in Winterfell. She is highborn by blood and lives with the Stark family, yet she is a bastard with no claim. This means she doesn't fully belong in either world. She's not lowborn, but the servants and guards still call her Snow and know she's not quite a Stark. She's not a true Stark lady, but she eats at their table, albeit at the far end, and shares tutors with the Stark girls. Catelyn ensured that Lyra received a gentlewoman's basic education. Septa taught lessons in needlework. The seven-pointed star, the religion of the seven, to honor Catelyn's southern heritage, and household management. But Lyra also listens longingly to the shouts of Robb, Bran, and the other boys training in the yard with wooden swords. She dreams of practicing arms like they do. In the North, girls are not normally trained in combat, and certainly not bastard girls. Catelyn would never approve it. Yet Lyra has that Lyanna streak, a rebellious courage, and she finds ways to learn. Sometimes Arya and Lyra practice archery in secret, taking one of Bran's small bows to shoot at weirwood trees in the Godswood. Jon Snow in the original timeline trained alongside Robb openly, but Lyra must be stealthier. Ser Rodrik Cassel, Winterfell's master-at-arms, occasionally catches Lyra watching the boys sparring. He shoos her off with a gruff lecture that the yard is no place for a girl. Once, though, Rodrik finds Lyra and Arya out back trying clumsy swings with broomsticks. The old knight has a soft spot for bold youth. Arya is proof of that, and instead of punishing them, he corrects Lyra's grip on the stick and shows her a proper stance. "Just so you don't hurt yourself, milady, or hurt others accidentally," he mutters. Over the years, Lyra picks up a little bit of fencing footwork here, a little staff fighting there, mostly through observation and occasional kindness from Winterfell soldiers who view her as Ned's kin. By her early teens, she can ride as well as Arya, who is quite skilled, and has even hidden a small dagger in her boot that she knows how to use if needed. This is Lyra's secret, though outwardly she's expected to become a modest lady's companion, or perhaps a quiet wife to some minor lord. One day, inside she nurtures the soul of a warrior, a wolf-blooded girl who yearns for freedom. Life isn't easy for Lyra, however. The stigma of bastardy follows her everywhere. Northern culture is blunt on this topic. Bastards are inherently viewed with suspicion, thought to be born with the bastard's luck, which is to say ill fortune and treachery. As a girl, Lyra doesn't face the inheritance rivalries a boy would, but she faces other hardships. She has no true place or title. At grand feasts she must sit far down the table, with the squires or household staff, rather than near Lord Stark's family. When highborn visitors come to Winterfell, Catelyn politely introduces Lyra as "my husband's natural daughter," and the words sting every time Lyra hears them. She keenly feels the difference in how strangers treat her versus Arya or Sansa. For instance, Jane Poole, the steward's daughter and Sansa's friend, whispers cruel japes that Lyra is just a Snow, not worth a true knight's attention. Once Lyra overhears a visiting lady from another northern house gossiping. "I hear Lord Stark's bastard girl is pretty, but a bastard's pretty face is a dangerous thing. Trouble for true-born daughters when the men come courting." Hearing such talk, young Lyra first realizes that as she grows into a young woman, she might even be viewed as a rival or a temptation to the suitors of noble ladies. It's a frightening thought, and it makes her feel ashamed of her own blooming beauty. She begins to wear simpler, drabber clothes than her half-sisters, as if to downplay her looks. It doesn't stop the whispers. Through all this, Lyra finds strength in a few close relationships. Arya is like a little sister and co-conspirator in adventures. Robb is a loving older brother figure, who treats Lyra with affection and respect. To Robb's credit, he never looks down on her for her birth. Ned raised him better than that. Bran and Rickon are younger and accept Lyra as part of the family without question, though Bran, very observant, once asks innocently why Lyra's last name is Snow and not Stark. This awkward moment ended with Maester Luwin gently explaining the concept of illegitimacy to Bran, while Lyra listened in silence, cheeks burning with embarrassment. It was one of the first times she truly understood how society labeled her. And then there's Sansa Stark, the elegant elder daughter of Winterfell. Sansa is about the same age as Lyra, perhaps a year younger, but their relationship is complicated. Sansa has been raised on songs of knights and ladies and the importance of proper birth and status. She isn't outright cruel to Lyra. Sansa is usually polite to everyone. But there's a distance. Sansa sometimes looks at Lyra the way her mother does, with thinly veiled disapproval or pity. It doesn't help that Lyra and Arya are thick as thieves, often snickering together at Sansa's poised, ladylike manners. Sansa feels a little jealous that Arya admires Lyra's boyish exploits more than Sansa's ladyship. And Sansa, deep down, also resents that, because of Lyra's presence, their mother Catelyn often seems worried or upset. Sansa doesn't know the full truth of why her mother dislikes Lyra. She assumes it's just because she's a bastard. But she sees the strain. In one notable incident, a touring hedge knight visited Winterfell and made a flattering remark about Lyra's pretty eyes, comparing them to Lyanna's. The knight had known of Lyanna Stark's beauty in his youth. Lady Catelyn briskly interrupted to bring Sansa forward, showcasing Sansa's auburn Tully looks instead. Sansa realized then that her mother felt threatened, in a way, by Lyra's Stark-like beauty. It planted a seed of wariness in Sansa's mind. She must outshine the bastard in every proper way, so Sansa doubles down on being the picture of a highborn lady, while Lyra spends her time with Arya chasing cats or exploring Winterfell's less-traveled corridors. The sisters by blood and sister by heart form two sides around Sansa, who remains cordial but distant with Lyra. For Lyra's part, she often feels lonely despite living among a big family. Arya's companionship and Ned's quiet love keep her going. Maester Luwin also treats her kindly. He encourages her interest in history and even in the old gods. Unlike Sansa, Lyra prefers the Stark Godswood and the Heart Tree to Septim Ordaine's teachings of the Seven. In the Godswood, Lyra prays to the old gods to make her strong and brave like the heroes of legend, and maybe, just maybe, to make Lady Catelyn accept her one day. Those prayers, it seems, go unanswered for many years. Catelyn Stark, from her perspective, struggles with conflicting feelings. True, Lyra is not a threat to Robb's inheritance, and for that reason Catelyn initially thinks she can be more at ease with a bastard daughter in the house than she would with a bastard son. She doesn't actively wish Lyra harm. At times she even feels pity for the girl. But as Lyra blossoms into a young woman, Catelyn faces new anxieties. She notices how men's eyes sometimes linger on Lyra when they visit Winterfell. A Frey envoy's son, a young knight, was clearly smitten with Lyra's wild northern beauty during a feast, even though the knight was supposed to be courting one of Lord Serwyn's daughters. Cat sees the way such attention could complicate alliances and expectations. She worries, what if some lordling chooses Lyra over a true-born lady, causing scandal? What if Robb's bannermen get divided attention because of Ned's base-born girl? In Catelyn's worldview, bastards should be kept low to avoid stirring up trouble in the order of things. Ned's insistence on raising Lyra among them, almost like a true-born, is walking a dangerous line. And there's another subtle fear gnawing at Cat, the matter of marriage. True-born daughters like Sansa and Arya will have carefully arranged marriages to strengthen the house. Bastard girls, however, have far fewer prospects. Often they are married off to some minor lord, mercenary, or even a rich common merchant. Catelyn knows eventually they'll need to find a match for Lyra to prevent her from becoming a permanent distraction at Winterfell. But who? Offering a noble family a bastard bride could offend them. Yet marrying her to someone too low-born could be seen as insulting Ned's own blood. It's a tricky situation that looms in the future. Despite these concerns, the Starks' lives proceed relatively peacefully through the 290s AC. The long summer stretches on, the children grow, Ned Stark rules the North wisely, and Lyra Snow learns to exist in the margin between family and outsider. She earns quiet respect from Winterfell's people for her kindness and spirit. She's often seen helping in the kitchens or playing with little Rickon and Bran, or riding through the Wintertown on errands for Maester Luwin. To the small folk, she is our Ned's girl, and they treat her with the straightforward warmth of Northerners. Within the walls of the castle, however, Lyra is always careful not to overstep her place, an instinct drilled into her by years of Lady Stark's cold glances. Know your place, or else someone will put you in it, is a lesson bastards learn early. The king comes north. Everything changes in the year 298 AC, when King Robert Baratheon rides north to Winterfell. In the original timeline, Jon Snow's life took a turn during this royal visit. In our alternate timeline, Lyanna Snow's life is about to be upended in ways she never imagined. When news arrives that King Robert, Queen Cersei, and the royal court are coming, Winterfell erupts in a frenzy of preparation. Lyanna helps where she can, sewing banners and polishing armor alongside Sansa and Arya. Lady Catelyn pointedly instructs Lyanna on decorum. During the king's visit, you will not speak unless spoken to, and you will stay in the background. Catelyn is determined that her husband's bastard not embarrass the Starks in front of the Southron nobles. She fears what Robert might think or say if Ned's past indiscretion is flaunted. Lyanna nods dutifully, used to such treatment, though Arya frowns on her behalf. The royal party arrives in grand fashion. Lyanna watches from a balcony as King Robert, once a fine warrior, now bloated and boisterous, embraces Ned Stark in the Winterfell courtyard. Queen Cersei Lannister and her brothers are splendid in their Lannister gold. The procession of knights, guards, and courtiers seems endless. Lyanna feels both excitement and dread. This is the first time so many high lords from the south have seen her. She knows the story. She's the bastard of Winterfell, likely the subject of whispers. She keeps her head high and stays with the Stark family, slightly off to the side. Sansa and Jane Poole giggle over the handsome knights like Sir Jaime Lannister, while Arya makes faces at the dignified Princess Myrcella. Lyanna stands quietly, trying to seem unobtrusive. During the initial welcome, King Robert scans the Stark children lined up. He pats little Bran on the head, compliments Sansa's beauty, chuckles at Arya's eager tomboy stance, and then his eyes land on Lyanna Snow lingering behind them. Robert Baratheon freezes as if he's seen a ghost. For a heartbeat, he is speechless, staring at the girl's face. Lyanna, confused, drops her gaze under the scrutiny. Ned quickly steps forward, almost blocking Lyra with his body, and greets the king loudly to distract him. Robert recovers with a booming laugh and insists on visiting the crypts at once, dragging Ned along. But even as he walks off, the king steals a few more curious glances over his shoulder at Lyanna. Later that evening, a lavish feast is held in Winterfell's great hall to honor the king. True to Catelyn's instructions, Lyra is not seated at the high table with the royal family and Starks. Instead, she's placed down with the squires and lesser relatives. In fact, Catelyn was so concerned that Robert might take offense, or more accurately take too much interest, at the presence of Ned's bastard, that she arranged Lyra sit as far from the king's sight as possible. This doesn't bother Lyra much, she's used to it, and being away from the intimidating Lannisters is a relief. She ends up near Tyrion Lannister, the queen's dwarf brother, who has no assigned seat at the high table either. During the feast, Lyra observes the glittering scene. King Robert eating and drinking enough for 6 men, Queen Cersei feigning smiles, Joffrey and Sansa whispering, betrothed as they are, and the Starks looking both honored and uncomfortable in their own hall. Lyra quietly sips summer wine, and even sneaks some roast into her lap for her direwolf pup under the table. Yes, she too has a direwolf. In this timeline, when the Stark children found the direwolf pups on the road south of Winterfell, there were 6 pups. Lyra received the extra female pup with snowy white fur, which she named Ghost for her silence and color. Jon Snow's absence means Lyra bonded with the albino direwolf instead, which ironically suits her well. Ghost, her white direwolf, lies at her feet unseen by most. As she feeds Ghost, a voice interrupts, "Your wolf has an appetite." Lyra looks up to see Tyrion Lannister regarding her with one eyebrow cocked. The stark, no pun intended, difference in their statures. Tyrion short and misshapen, Lyra tall and lean, makes for an odd sight. But Lyra smiles politely. Tyrion strikes up a conversation. Curious about this northern bastard girl with a dire wolf at dinner, he remarks on the wolf's unusual whiteness. Lyra explains softly that she named her Ghost because of her white color and silent step. Tyrion grins. A ghost beside a snow, how fitting. There is a natural rapport between them. Tyrion has always been an outsider in his own family. He recognizes a fellow outsider in Lyra. He probes gently, asking about life in the north, and eventually asks the question point blank. "You are Eddard Stark's bastard daughter, are you not?" Lyra stiffens at the blunt mention of bastard. Sensing he might have offended, Tyrion quickly apologizes with surprising courtesy. "I meant no harm. Bastards need not be ashamed among dwarfs. We're both looked down on in most places. His tone is wry but sympathetic. Lyra finds herself relaxing. She's heard of the imp's sharp tongue, but he's treating her as an equal in misfortune, rather than an object of scorn. She asks Tyrion what it's like to live in King's Landing. He chuckles and says, "Filthy, hot, noisy, you'd hate it. The North has its charms. Though it's a wonder a pretty girl like you hasn't married some strapping northern lad yet." Lyra flushes. No one highborn has ever openly called her pretty to her face. She mutters, "I have little dowry and less name. Not many offers come my way." Tyrion studies her for a moment over his wine cup, and then offers famous words of wisdom. "Never forget what you are. The rest of the world will not. Wear it like armor, and it can never be used to hurt you." Lyra lets those words sink in. Wear it like armor. Is it truly possible to take the thing that causes her shame, her bastard status, and turn it into a strength? She's not sure, but Tyrion's advice emboldens her a little. "Easy for you to say, my lord. You have nothing to prove," she says, half teasing. Tyrion smirks. "My own father never ceases to remind me what I am. Dwarf, bastard, or bastard boy, it's all the same in the end. We make our own worth." He raises his goblet in a tiny toast to her. In that moment, Lyra feels seen and understood. An unlikely friendship sparks between the Stark bastard and the Lannister dwarf that night, much as it did between Jon and Tyrion in canon. They part with Tyrion gently petting Ghost's head and wishing Lyra good fortune. While Lyra was making an ally, King Robert was making plans. Plans involving her. The next morning, while the adults converse in Winterfell's great chamber, Robert pulls Ned aside with a hearty grin. The king is in an oddly jocular mood. He slaps Ned on the back and says, "Your little girl, the bastard. 7 hells, Ned. She's the very image of Lyanna. Takes me 20 years back, seeing her." Ned's blood runs cold. He forces a chuckle. She has the Stark look. Robert licks his lips, already thinking of wine, though it's morning, and muses, "Aye, that she does. Beautiful. You chose her name well too, Lyra, is it? Reminds me of my dear one's name." Ned feels a prick of alarm at how Robert refers to Lyanna as my dear one, even now. He cannot misstep, so he remains quiet, hoping Robert drops the subject. But Robert clears his throat and ventures, "You've done well by the girl, raising her. But a pretty young thing like that. It's a bloody waste to hide her up here forever." Ned's hand tightens on an ornamental goblet. What is Robert driving at? The king barrels on, somewhat awkwardly, for he knows this might offend his friend. "I was thinking. The court down in King's Landing, it could use some northern spice. Perhaps I could take the girl on as a lady-in-waiting for the queen, or one of my ladies. She'd have no lack of companionship. And who knows, maybe we'd find a proper match for her down south." Robert says all this with an air of generosity, as if offering a favor. But Ned knows his old friend too well. He hears what's truly being said. Robert wants Lyra at court, near him. Ned's mind flashes to the horrifying image of his precious Lyra being taken as the king's mistress, or worse, Robert making some lustful advance on her. Robert has never been known for fidelity or restraint. He fathered numerous bastards himself, Maya Stone in the Vale, an infant in King's Landing, and more. The thought of Robert's drunken hands on Lyra, seeing in her the specter of Lyanna, turns Ned's stomach. Yet how to refuse the king without causing offense? Ned replies carefully, "Your grace is kind, but Lyra is still very young and unaccustomed to southern ways. I fear she'd not thrive at court." Robert waves this off. "She'd adapt. And she's what, 15? Old enough to wed or nearly?" "Cersei could find a place for," Ned interrupts, a bit sharply. "I've already promised Lyra to a marriage here in the north." This is a lie. Ned has made no such arrangements yet, but he grasps at it to protect his daughter. Robert looks surprised. "Promised? To whom?" Ned's quick mind conjures the first plausible name, to a squire of Lord Hornwood's household. It's a believable match. House Hornwood is a lesser northern house, Ned adds. "I plan to see her wed soon, in fact." This does the trick. Robert seems disappointed, but hides it behind a jovial shrug. "7 save me, Ned, you waste no time." "Well, if that's the case, still, think on my offer. Should the match fall through, the court will welcome her." Robert gives a final pat and leaves it at that, not wishing to irk his friend further. Ned breathes easier as Robert moves away. He has successfully diverted the king, for now. However, this entire episode further poisons Catelyn's view of Lyra. Catelyn overheard enough to gather that Robert was interested in Lyra's prospects, perhaps even in Lyra herself. That sends a spike of panic through Lady Stark. She recalls how Robert loved Lyanna. To see Lyanna's features in a young girl might dangerously ignite old passions, or at least royal fascination. The idea that her husband's bastard could become the king's mistress, or heaven forbid, even queen if Robert were to put Cersei aside, is the stuff of Cat's worst nightmares. It would elevate Lyra far above Catelyn's own children in station. Catelyn thanks the mother that Ned quashed the idea quickly. But her demeanor toward Lyra grows even more sour after the royal visit. She blames Lyra, unfairly, for catching the king's eye and causing potential trouble. The complex venomous dynamic the user described is coming to fruition. Catelyn now sees Lyra as a rival to her daughters in the eyes of powerful men. First it was the matter of local suitors. Now the king of Westeros himself showed interest. Catelyn doubles down on keeping Lyra in the background. If Lyra was a ghost in Winterfell's halls before, now she's practically a shadow. Meanwhile, King Robert names Ned Stark the Hand of the King, and the Starks' lives are set on a new course. Ned must go south to King's Landing to assume the role, and he will take his daughters Sansa and Arya with him. Sansa is betrothed to Prince Joffrey, and Arya is to learn southern courtesy and maybe find a future match. In the original timeline, Jon Snow used this moment to decide to take the Black and join the Night's Watch, seeing no future for himself at Winterfell after Ned left. But in our timeline, Lyra cannot make such a choice. The Night's Watch does not accept women. It is a sworn brotherhood of men. There will be no escape to the Wall for Lyra Snow. Her fate is to remain in the world of courts and politics, where a girl can be used as a pawn. As the Stark household prepares to split, Lyra feels a pang of heartbreak. Her beloved father Ned is leaving, likely for years. In private, Ned reassures Lyra, holding her by the shoulders and looking into eyes so much like Lyanna's. You will be safe here in Winterfell. Robb and Bran and Rickon need you. Serve your brother, obey Lady Catelyn, and keep our family's honor safe. Lyra nods, fighting tears. She promises to look after her little brothers. Robb is almost grown, but Bran and Rickon are small. Ned hesitates, then pulls Lyra into a quick embrace. The next time I see you, he says softly, I expect you'll be a woman grown. He almost sounds sad to be missing her last years of girlhood. A part of Ned wishes he could take Lyra with him for her protection, especially after Robert's unsettling interest. But he knows that would only expose her to greater peril among the schemers of King's Landing. And Catelyn absolutely forbade bringing Lyra along. Their family dynamic is strained enough, so Ned leaves his Snow daughter in the north. Before he departs, Ned also speaks to Robb, who is barely 15 but must act as Lord of Winterfell in Ned's absence. Ned advises Robb to keep his bannermen close, to heed Maester Luwin's counsel, and to watch over his siblings. Especially Lyra, Ned adds in a lower voice. She has all the North in her, Robb, but the North can be cruel to its bastard children. Make sure she is treated with the respect due my blood. Robb, earnest and responsible, assures his father he will. Robb loves Lyra as a sister, and has even stepped in on occasion when other boys teased her. He swears she will be as safe as his own sisters, and so Ned Stark rides south with his daughters and an entourage, leaving Winterfell in the hands of Robb, Catelyn, for now, and the household staff. As they say their farewells, Lyra stands in the courtyard holding little Rickon's hand, watching Arya and Sansa hug her goodbye. Arya squeezes Lyra fiercely. Write to me, Arya pleads, tears in her eyes. King's Landing will be so boring without you showing me fun things. Lyra smiles and promises to write, though she knows Septa Mordane will probably seize any letters. Sansa gives Lyra a polite, lukewarm farewell. Goodbye, Lyra, the gods keep you well. There is no animosity, but also no closeness in Sansa's tone. Lyra curtsies to her half-sister, wishing her a safe journey and good fortune in the south. Finally, Ned embraces Lyra. One more time briefly, and then he is gone, through the gates with the royal procession. Winterfell suddenly feels emptier and colder. Lady Catelyn stays behind initially. In the books, Catelyn remained at Winterfell for a time after Ned left, until events pushed her to go south too. For the next few weeks, Lyra adjusts to a new routine. Robb is acting lord, learning to make decisions. Catelyn, though grieving Ned's absence, helps Robb and ensures things run smoothly. Lyra keeps a low profile, as instructed. Without Arya around, Lyra has fewer outlets for her adventurous side, so she pours her energy into helping Bran and Rickon and occasionally riding patrols with Robb. He allows her to ride with him and Theon when they go hawking or checking the holdfasts. Robb doesn't mind, and Lyra is an excellent horsewoman. These are some of Lyra's happiest days, oddly. She feels useful and more equal when riding across the winter fields with Robb. Both of them cloaked in Stark colors. Though she officially has no right to the Stark sigil, she wears plain gray. Even Theon Greyjoy, the young ward of Ned, treats her amiably on these outings. He has a flirtatious streak and can't resist showing off to any girl. Theon's attention to Lyra is mostly casual, jokey flirting. He knows she's Ned's bastard, and thus off-limits in a way, but that doesn't stop him from winking or making the occasional suggestive comment. Lyra mostly laughs it off or gives as good as she gets in banter. She's learned to navigate playful flirtation, knowing nothing serious can come of it. Then comes the dire news from the south. Lord Eddard Stark has been arrested for treason in King's Landing. The shocking news hits Winterfell like a thunderbolt. Catelyn had already left Winterfell by then. She departed to sail to King's Landing after Tyrion Lannister, leading to her dramatic capture of Tyrion at the Inn of the Crossroads. So when word comes of Ned's imprisonment, Robb Stark is the one to act, now a Lord of Winterfell truly. He calls the Northern Bannermen to war, raising his father's banners to march south and rescue Ned, and also to defend the Riverlands, since Catelyn's father's lands are under attack by the Lannisters. The War of the Five Kings is about to begin, though they don't know that name yet. War in the north and a pawn in play, Robb Stark, only 15, suddenly finds himself leading an army. Before he marches south, he must secure the north. He leaves Bran Stark, only a boy of 7, but the oldest male Stark remaining at Winterfell, as acting lord in his stead. By Bran's side remain Maester Luwin, the veteran Sir Roderick Cassel, and Lyra Snow. Catelyn is away. Arya and Sansa are captive in the south. Sansa confirmed hostage, Arya missing after Ned's capture, and Rickon is just a toddler. Winterfell's remaining lady of mature age is actually Lyra, though no one would formally call her the Lady of Winterfell due to her birth. Still, in practice, Lyra steps up to help Bran run the household when Robb marches off to war. Before leaving, Robb has a private talk with Lyra. "I need you here, with Bran and Rickon. They're so young. I know, Mother. I know she's never been warm to you, but with her gone, there's no other woman of our house here. Will you do this, sister?" Robb uses sister without hesitation, looking at Lyra with earnest reliance. Lyra's heart swells. Never has she felt so trusted and included. "Of course, Robb. I'll do whatever I can." She vows to be there for her little brothers and to keep Winterfell safe until Robb returns with their father. Robb smiles, relieved. He leaves Theon Greyjoy at Winterfell initially as well, to help keep the fortress secure. This is a change. In canon, Robb took Theon with him immediately. But let's assume he might leave Theon to assist Bran for a short while. Robb departs with his army, heading south to the Riverlands. Now begins a new chapter for Lyra, managing life at Winterfell in wartime. She finds herself working closely with Maester Luwin, Ser Roderick, and Bran to handle ravens, food stores, and the worries of small folk who come for guidance. At first, northern lords are a bit skeptical of Lyra taking any leadership. When some ravens return with demands from minor holdfasts, Lyra writes replies in Bran's name, using the seal of Winterfell. A certain grizzled castellan of a Bannerman keep grumbles that a snow girl is sending orders in the Stark heir's name. But Ser Roderick backs her up staunchly, and gradually Lyra earns respect for her level-headedness. She coordinates the gathering of extra grain for winter, the sending of some men to bolster the next defenses, and she even cleverly diffuses a dispute between two servant families at Winterfell, which threatened to turn ugly in the tension of war. Bran idolizes Lyra's ability to take charge. He often watches her and tries to imitate her calm confidence when presiding over small matters. However, trouble is brewing beyond Winterfell's walls in ways they cannot imagine. As in the original history, Robb Stark wins some early victories against the Lannisters. He defeats the army at Whispering Wood and captures Jaime Lannister. He wins the Battle of the Camps and lifts the siege of Riverrun. The North and Riverlands declare Robb Stark the king in the North, a dramatic turning point that never happened in Westeros for centuries. All of this news eventually reaches Winterfell via ravens. Each dispatch is a mix of elation and dread for Lyra. She cheers when hearing of Robb's victories and his new title, King in the North, the young wolf, her beloved brother now a king. But she weeps in private when the raven arrives stating Eddard Stark was executed in King's Landing by King Joffrey. Her father is dead, branded a traitor by the Iron Throne. The shock hits Lyra hard. She curls up in the crypt of Winterfell, near Lyanna Stark's statue, and sobs for the man who raised her. It is Ghost, her direwolf, who finds her and comforts her, lying by her side in the dark crypt until her tears are spent. This personal grief steels Lyra's resolve even more. The Lannisters and Baratheons took her father and hold her sisters. She will do whatever she can to aid Robb's cause. If that means managing Winterfell responsibly and keeping their home front secure, she'll do it without complaint. Not long after, catastrophe strikes Winterfell in a different form. Theon Greyjoy's betrayal. In the original story, Theon, left behind after the Whispering Wood, volunteered to go to the Iron Islands to seek an alliance with his father Balon Greyjoy, but ended up betraying Robb and attacking the North. In our scenario, events align similarly. Theon departs Winterfell, with Robb's leave, to negotiate with the Iron Islands for help, and he too is seduced by ambition and his father's pressure. Balon Greyjoy crowns himself king of the Iron Islands and launches a surprise assault on the north while Robb's forces are away. Theon Greyjoy, eager to prove himself, strikes at the heart. He sails a small force up the White Knife and then marches overland to Winterfell, intending to seize it. Winterfell is poorly defended at this point. Most Stark fighting men are off with Robb's army in the south. Only a token garrison remains. Bran is the acting lord, with Lyra and Maester Luwin advising him. Sir Roderick Cassel had left Winterfell to gather some men against raiders. Since an ACOK timeline, Ramsay Snow was marauding in the Hornwood lands and Roderick went to stop him. So when Theon's forces arrive at Winterfell's gates, they catch the castle by complete surprise, just as they did in canon. It's early morning when the alarm bells ring. Lyra is breaking her fast with Bran and Rickon when a breathless guard bursts in. Ironborn soldiers at the gate, chaos ensues. Theon Greyjoy himself calls for entry, claiming he has returned with friends. But that ruse doesn't last. The Ironborn quickly overrun the walls. In the scramble, Lyra grabs Bran's hand and rushes him and Rickon toward the crypts below Winterfell for safety. Hodor, the gentle giant stable boy, carries Rickon. Maester Luwin goes with them. Lyra has her dagger and a bow slung over her shoulder. She started keeping one near since the war began. She knows if it comes to a fight, they have few guards to resist, and she's not fully trained for open battle. The best bet is to hide the Stark boys, then perhaps parley or fight if needed. They get into the crypt's secret passage before Theon's men catch them. Hodor, Bran, Rickon, Lyra, and Maester Luwin end up concealed among the tombs of the Stark ancestors, in darkness but safe for the moment. Outside, Winterfell is taken. Theon declares himself Prince of Winterfell. Once he's secured the castle, Theon tries to find Bran and Rickon, for he needs the Stark heirs to secure legitimacy over Winterfell. When they're not immediately found, Theon flies into a frustration. He gathers everyone he can, the servants, remaining villagers, and Lyra Snow. Yes, Lyra is not in the crypts initially. Why? 'Cause in the rush, she made a split-second decision. Someone needed to divert the Ironborn's attention so the boys could get away. So Lyra did something daring. She ran the opposite direction from Bran, drawing a few guards with her. She planned to lead any pursuers on a wild goose chase through the castle and possibly outside, to give Bran and Rickon time to hide. In that chaotic moment, it worked partially. A couple of Theon's Ironborn chased Lyra through the library tower in the Godswood, but she evaded them. However, once Theon had control, it was only a matter of time until Lyra was sniffed out by the Bolton's hounds. Theon took some of Ramsay Snow's reavers with him in this timeline, perhaps. Lyra is dragged before Theon in Winterfell's great hall, bruised and furious but alive. Theon is surprised and oddly pleased to have caught Lyra. The two have known each other for years, almost like siblings, but now the dynamic has shifted violently. Theon, trying to look the part of a conqueror, proclaims that Lyra Snow is his prisoner. Lyra's heart sinks, but she keeps a defiant glare on Theon. She demands to know what he's done with Bran and Rickon, and Theon demands she tell him where they are. It becomes clear to both that the Stark boys slipped away. Maester Luwin, who remained hidden, wisely instructed Bran and Rickon to keep silent in the crypts. They remain undiscovered for now, just as in canon when Bran Rickon hid. Theon, frustrated at losing the Stark heirs, throws Lyra in a cell. Actually, he imprisons her in her old bedchamber with guards at the door. Winterfell doesn't have a classic dungeon full of cells. He's not entirely sure what to do with her. A bastard daughter isn't as valuable a hostage as Bran or Rickon, but she's still Ned Stark's blood, and Robb Stark's half-sister. Theon knows Robb cared for Lyra. Perhaps she could be a bargaining chip if used correctly. Also, Theon personally feels a swirl of guilt and attraction. He's betrayed the Starks, but seeing Lyra's accusing gray eyes pierce him makes Theon uncomfortable. To mask that, he acts cocky. He visits Lyra under guard and tries to justify himself. I had no choice, you see. I'm a Greyjoy. I've come into my own. Robb never would have given me what I'm owed. Lyra retorts that Robb treated him as a brother and Ned as a son. Theon doesn't want to hear it. You wouldn't understand. You were never a prisoner here. Never a hostage to another's will. Lyra's temper flares. My whole life I've been a hostage to what others think of me. Don't presume to know my chains, Theon. He falls quiet at that, unexpectedly moved by her statement. Perhaps he recalls how she was never truly free either, always living under Catelyn's disapproval. There's a moment where old familiarity almost softens Theon, but it passes quickly as his Ironborn persona reasserts itself. He informs Lyra that if Bran and Rickon don't show themselves, he will have to take harsh measures to secure Winterfell and his claim. Those harsh measures arrive soon enough. In canon, Theon, unable to find the Stark boys, executes 2 innocent miller's boys and passes off their burnt corpses as Bran and Rickon to terrorize the North into submission. In our timeline, Theon does the same. He has Reek/Ramsay, if present, or another cruel henchman help him kill 2 peasant boys of similar size, and he presents their charred bodies as Bran and Rickon Stark. The sight is displayed in Winterfell's courtyard to strike fear and break any thought of resistance. Lyra, locked in her room, hears the wailing when those bodies are unveiled. Maester Luwin manages to slip into Lyra's chamber, perhaps through a connected passage or when guards change, to tell her what happened. Lyra breaks down in tears, believing for a moment that Bran and Rickon are truly dead. The kindly Maester, however, informs her in a whisper that he found the crypts empty, meaning the boys likely escaped alive with Hodor, Osha, the wildling woman who was a captive turned helper, and the Reed siblings, Jojen and Mira Reed, had arrived at Winterfell earlier and went into hiding with Bran as in canon. Luwin speculates they fled Winterfell before the search tightened. This gives Lyra a spark of hope that her little brothers are alive somewhere. She holds on to that hope fiercely to endure what comes next. And what comes next is even darker. House Bolton's treachery. In the original history, Bolton forces led by Ramsay Snow, disguised as the servant Reek, tricked their way into Winterfell and annihilated Theon's men, sacking Winterfell in the process. In this timeline, something similar occurs. Ramsay Snow, the bastard of Roose Bolton, arrives at Winterfell under the pretense of helping Theon against a supposed northern relief force. Ramsay had earlier been taken captive by Roderick Cassel, as in canon, but escaped when Theon took Winterfell. Now Ramsay uses his devious tricks. He convinces Theon to let him gather the remaining Ironborn at Winterfell in one place under promise of safe passage. Winterfell is put to the torch. In the chaos, Lyra Snow nearly loses her life. When Ramsay's forces turn on Theon's, the castle erupts in fighting and flames. Lyra's guards abandon their post to join the melee, or are killed by Bolton's. She flees her room amid the confusion, determined to escape this bloodbath. She witnesses horrors, Bolton soldiers cutting down innocent Winterfell servants, the Castellan who was loyal to Stark being killed mercilessly. She even sees Theon Greyjoy being dragged away, pleading his fate to become Ramsay's prisoner. Lyra avoids direct confrontations, using her knowledge of the castle's secret passages. Perhaps she follows the same route Bran once did climbing, or goes through the Godswood. Ghost, her direwolf, appears out of nowhere, having broken free in the turmoil, and stays at her side, snarling at any attacker. With Ghost's aid, Lyra cuts down a Bolton man who lunges at her, her dagger finding a chink in his armor by sheer luck and desperation. It's the first time she's ever killed. She doesn't have the luxury to dwell on it. She presses on. The night is a haze of smoke and blood. By dawn, Winterfell is a smoldering ruin, and the Bolton sigil's flayed man banners fly where direwolves once did. Lyra manages to slip outside the fallen castle, wounded in the arm but alive, hiding beneath the collapsed gate. She sees Ramsay Snow, now legitimized by Lord Roose Bolton and calling himself Ramsay Bolton, parading as the new savior of Winterfell, claiming he'll hold it for the king in the north. All a ploy. If he finds Ned Stark's bastard daughter, she'd likely end up flayed or worse. Thus begins Lyra's harrowing escape from Winterfell's ruins. With her direwolf Ghost by her side, she sneaks past Bolton patrols and disappears into the Wolf's Wood. Over the next days, Lyra becomes a fugitive in her own homeland. She trades her torn, blood-stained dress for a woolen cloak and breeches scavenged from a burnt wagon. Disguising herself as a peasant boy, she cuts her long brown hair short with her dagger in a mirror of Arya's own disguise journey. Why a boy? Because the countryside is now rife with iron-born stragglers, Bolton soldiers, and lawless men in the chaos of war. A girl traveling alone would attract the worst kind of attention. So Lyra binds her chest, muddies her face, and moves by night, heading south. Her goal, find her family. She doesn't know Bran and Rickon's exact whereabouts. Perhaps they went to the last hearth of the Umbers or the Dreadfort area, but she doubts they'd go near the Boltons. She decides the best course is to head toward Robb Stark's army in the Riverlands. Only with Robb and Catelyn can she truly be safe and help retake Winterfell later. The journey south through the Neck is perilous. Fortunately for Lyra, the Crannog men loyal to Howland Reed become her unexpected allies. At one point, exhausted and nearly caught by a roving band of Bolton soldiers, Lyra and Ghost stray into the swamps of the Neck. There, instead of foes, they encounter a camouflaged group of Reed Cranogmen. These small, frog-spear-wielding folk recognize Ghost as a Stark's direwolf. Ghost's white fur is legendary. Carefully, they escort Lyra to Greywater Watch, the moving fortress of Howland Reed. Lord Howland Reed, the very man who was with Ned at Lyanna's death, welcomes Ned's daughter with shock and relief. News of Winterfell's fall had reached him, and he feared all Eddard's children were lost. Howland tends to Lyra's wounds and gives her shelter. He is an enigmatic, loyal man, long hidden from the world. Now, he is faced with a girl he knows carries an incredible secret, one he has kept for 15 years. In Howland's halls, such as they are, Greywater Watch is a modest, boggy stronghold. Lyra recuperates briefly. She learns from Howland about Robb being declared king in the north and that Robb's host is at River Run. She shares what happened at Winterfell, Theon's taking of the castle, Bran and Rickon's escape, and the Bolton betrayal. Howland Reed's face grows dark at mention of Bolton treachery. He swears his Cranogmen will never bow to the Boltons. He pledges to deliver Lyra safely to her brother Robb. But he also knows the Southern War is growing ever more dangerous. At this point, the war's political landscape is complicated. Renly Baratheon is dead, killed by Shadow. News travels north slowly, but likely known via Catelyn's letters. Stannis Baratheon was defeated at the Blackwater by the Lannister-Tyrell alliance. The Lannisters hold King's Landing firmly now, with Tywin Lannister as hand for his grandson, King Joffrey. The North/Riverlands stand alone against the Iron Throne, and the Ironborn incursions plague the coast. Robb's victories have been impressive, but his position is precarious. Unknown to Lyra yet during her time fleeing Winterfell, Robb made a controversial choice. He broke his marriage pact with House Frey and secretly wed Jane Westerling, a noblewoman of the Crag, for love, following the news of the supposedly Bran and Rickon's deaths. This act has alienated Walder Frey, a key ally controlling the bridge at the Twins. When Lyra and a small escort of Cranogmen travel south to meet Robb, they carry not only Lyra's personal experience but also the weight of Ned Stark's secret, which Howland Reed has safeguarded. During their journey, Howland faces a decision. Should he tell Lyra the truth of her birth? The quiet, swamp-born lord wrestles with his oath to Ned. Ultimately, he decides to hint but not fully reveal. Not yet. He tells Lyra stories of Lyanna Stark, describing her wolf blood and how brave and beautiful she was. Lyra soaks up every detail about the aunt she never knew but oddly resembles. Howland also mentions Rhaegar Targaryen in passing, carefully observing Lyra's reaction. Lyra has heard the official histories. Rhaegar abducted Lyanna, fathered a child on her. Everyone assumes that child died with Lyanna, not knowing it survived as Jon/Lyra, and Rhaegar died at Robert's hand on the Trident. Rhaegar is spoken of with contempt by Northerners. Lyra shares that view outwardly, but deep down she's conflicted. Rhaegar was her father. If Ned's hints about her mother being highborn, Willa was a placeholder, ever gave her pause. Ned never confirmed or denied anything to her about Rhaegar, of course, but Lyra always sensed a melancholy around talk of Lyanna in that time. Now, hearing Howland speak without hatred about Rhaegar, he notes Rhaegar was courteous at Harrenhal's tourney and loved music. Lyra is intrigued. She feels strangely connected to these tales but doesn't know why. Howland holds his tongue on the ultimate connection. That Lyra is Rhaegar and Lyanna's daughter. He judges that the time for truth is near, but best saved for when Lyra can be reunited with Robb and Catelyn. They deserve to know as well, and it might influence crucial decisions. The king in the north's gambit Lyra finally reaches River Run, the stronghold of House Tully and the current headquarters of King Robb Stark. It's mid-299 AC by now. Her arrival is dramatic. Imagine the scene. Robb is in the great hall of River Run, holding council with his lords, the great Jon Umber, Roose Bolton, still playing the loyal general for now, Edmure Tully, the rest. Queen Jane Westerling sits by Robb's side. Yes, Robb has married Jane in this timeline too, after falling in love when wounded. That secret is just coming out to his bannermen, causing unease. Lady Catelyn Stark is there as well. Returned from her missions, she went to treat with Renly, saw his death, freed Jaime in desperation after hearing of Bran Rickon's deaths. Tensions are high. Karstark has just killed Lannister prisoners in vengeance for his sons, and Robb is about to dole out justice. In canon, this leads to Karstark's execution and a crisis for Robb. Suddenly, as these heated debates continue, a messenger rushes in. "My lord, a group of Cranogmen have arrived under flag of truce. They claim they have Lady Lyra Snow with them." Catelyn Stark rises from her seat, astonished. Robb's eyes widen in hope and disbelief. Lyra, his half-sister whom he thought possibly dead or at best captive, is here? Robb immediately commands to let them in. The doors open, and in walks Lyra Snow, cloaked in gray and green. The Cranogman colors, gaunt from her journey but very much alive. At her heels pads Ghost, her direwolf, eliciting gasps. Many in the hall have heard of Jon Snow's White Wolf. They assume this is the same creature, not knowing the bastard was a girl in our tale. Robb leaps from his chair and rushes to Lyra, embracing her tightly before all his lords, tears in his eyes. "We feared the worst. Thank the gods you're safe." Lyra clings to her brother, overwhelmed finally to be among family again. Catelyn approaches more slowly. She is stunned. In her heart, she's relieved that one more child of Ned's blood survived the fall of Winterfell. But she's also immediately calculating what this means. If Bran and Rickon were believed dead, Lyra is now, aside from Sansa, the only known survivor of Winterfell's children in the eyes of many. That could complicate inheritance and alliances. Catelyn pushes those thoughts aside for now, and even gives Lyra a brief hug, murmuring, "I'm glad you're safe, child." It's perhaps the kindest tone Cat has ever used with Lyra. Surviving tragedy softens grudges, at least momentarily. The great hall is in an uproar of curiosity and emotion. Lord Howland Reed steps forward and bows to Robb, his new king. This is significant. Howland Reed had not left Greywater in years, and now here he is, pledging himself in person. He announces that his men will forever be loyal to House Stark and that he brings vital news. Over the next hours, Lyra and Howland fill in Robb and the top northern lords on what transpired. Theon's betrayal, the true fate of Bran and Rickon. Lyra is able to strongly suggest they likely survived, since no bodies were actually confirmed as them. This relieves Cat, who wept bitterly thinking them dead. And the Bolton treachery at Winterfell. Roose Bolton is in the hall listening. Imagine his quiet discomfort when his bastard's atrocity is recounted. Roose feigns shock and anger at Ramsay's actions, denouncing his son as a rogue he will punish. Some in the hall may doubt Roose's innocence, but there's no proof of his complicity yet. Robb is furious at Theon and Balon Greyjoy, and now also faces the knowledge that one of his key bannerman's heirs, Ramsay, committed vile treason. It's a lot to take in. Yet amid these revelations, another political matter surfaces: marriages and alliances. With the war going poorly after the loss of the Karstarks, Robb will execute Rickard Karstark for murdering prisoners unless Lyra's timely arrival changes the sequence. Let's assume Rickard Karstark still did his rash act, and Robb felt forced to execute him just before Lyra arrived. So the Karstark troops left, weakening Robb's army. Walder Frey is fuming over Robb's broken betrothal promise. Robb desperately needs new allies, or to mend the Frey relationship to have any hope of winning or even just holding the North. Here is where Lyra Snow becomes a pivotal pawn in the Game of Thrones. Robb, Cat, and the Blackfish, Cat's Uncle Brynden, convene privately to discuss their next move. They have Edmure Tully's impending marriage to a Frey in the works. The plan to appease Walder Frey, as in canon. But Walder Frey's pride is wounded. Some fear a single marriage of Edmure might not fully satisfy him after Robb's slight. Perhaps Walder will demand more hostages or marriages. This is where one lord suggests, What of Lord Stark's base-born daughter? Perhaps Lord Frey would take her for one of his sons? A beauty she is, by all accounts, and of Stark blood. The idea causes a stir. Some, like the great Jon, argue Walder Frey wouldn't value a bastard bride. Others note Frey had originally been promised Arya, when they believed Arya was safe, but Arya is missing. Maybe a legitimized Lyra could substitute. Robb is fiercely protective of Lyra and initially rejects the notion of using her as a bargaining chip. She's my sister. I won't barter her like a sack of grain. Lyra, sitting in on these war councils now, is quietly flattered by Robb's defense but also speaks up. If my marriage can help save our family or win the war, I'll do my duty. Those words stun Catelyn. Lyra sounds so dutiful, almost like Catelyn's own upbringing taught. Family, duty, honor. It's a moment of respect earned. Cat begins to see Lyra in a new light, not just as a rival or nuisance, but as a girl willing to sacrifice for the Starks. Still, Catelyn isn't thrilled about marrying Lyra to a Frey either. Walder Frey's grandsons are a notoriously unimpressive bunch. Then another possibility emerges: southern alliances. Now that the Lannister-Tyrell faction holds King's Landing, the Baratheon cause is effectively split. Stannis is weakened, Renly is dead. One kingdom stands largely aloof. Dorne, Tyrion Lannister, in King's Landing, had once floated offering Myrcella to Dorne for an alliance. Likewise, perhaps the king in the north could see common cause with Dorne, who have no love for the Lannisters because of Elia Martell's murder. If Robb could secure Dorne's help, the war might shift. But what would Dorne want? Possibly a marriage, or a promise. They know Prince Doran Martell has an heir, Prince Trystane, around Sansa's age. Sansa is unfortunately a Lannister captive, married to Tyrion by force actually, by this time in canon. Arya is missing. The only female Stark, broadly speaking, available is Lyra. Though a bastard, she could be legitimized by Robb's decree. As king in the north, he could name her a Stark if he chose. A marriage between Lyra, as a newly legitimate Stark, and a Martell princeling or lord could entice Dorne to join the conflict against the Lannisters. This idea tantalizes Catelyn more. An alliance with Dorne might help them avenge Ned and rescue the girls. But it also horrifies her on another level, legitimizing Lyra as a Stark. Catelyn has fought against that possibility for years, dreading the day Ned might formally acknowledge his bastard and give her Stark rights. Now Robb is considering doing just that for political gain. Cat's mind churns. If Lyra becomes Lyra Stark, and Robb dies in war, gods forbid, and Bran and Rickon are assumed dead, though Lyra insists they might live, but no proof, who would inherit Winterfell? Sansa is hostage to Lannisters. Arya is missing. The Northern Lords might rally behind a legitimized Lyra Stark as the next heir. That would elevate Ned's bastard above Cat's own true-born daughters in claim, since Sansa's in enemy hands, etc. Catelyn cannot openly oppose something that could help Robb's cause, but she is deeply uneasy at the prospect of Lyra, of all people, being made a Stark fully. We reach the pivotal moment, the climax of our alternate history, the revelation of Lyra's true parentage R+L=J, now Lyra. It likely unfolds during a heated council discussion about Lyra's fate. Picture Robb, Catelyn, Lyra, Howland Reed, maybe the Blackfish, and a few trusted lords like Maggie Mormont or Greatjon in a war room. They debate, marry Lyra to a Frey or send her to Dorne, legitimize her or not. Robb, anguished, says something like, "I wish father were here. He never wanted this for Lyra, to be used so coldly. But what choice do we have? The freedom of the North might hinge on her. Lyra herself, brave-faced, says she will do whatever will serve the North best." At that, Howland Reed clears his throat. This quiet man has sat by, guarding his secrets, but he realizes the time has come. There is something Lord Eddard entrusted to me, a promise I swore to keep, but I judged that keeping it now could do more harm than good. All eyes turn to him. Howland reveals that Ned left a sealed message with him to be delivered to Robb and Catelyn together, should certain circumstances arise. Perhaps Ned foresaw the need if he died and Lyra's position became precarious. Catelyn, puzzled, allows Howland to speak. With a deep breath, Howland drops the bombshell. Lyra Snow is not Ned's biological daughter. She is the daughter of Lyanna Stark and Prince Rhaegar Targaryen. A stunned silence. Catelyn actually gasps aloud, hand to her mouth. Robb looks utterly bewildered. His sister is a Targaryen? Lyra herself is shell-shocked. She didn't know this. She stammers that it cannot be. But Howland calmly explains. He was there at the Tower of Joy. He saw Lyanna give birth, heard her dying wish. Ned claimed the child as his bastard to protect her from Robert's wrath. Your father was the most honorable man I've known, Howland says, and he bore the shame of dishonor all these years to keep Lyra safe, to keep Rhaegar's daughter safe. The room erupts in incredulous exclamations. Catelyn sits down abruptly, eyes wet, a mix of relief. Ned didn't betray her with another woman after all. And renewed anxiety. Lyra is of royal blood, a far bigger deal than just Ned's baseborn. Robb's first reaction is disbelief turning to belief as he looks at Lyra. Yes, she has Lyanna's face, and now that he thinks about it, her features, though Starkish, have a certain fine nobility that could be Rhaegar's. Robb recalls Ned never speaking of Lyra's mother, the mysterious promise Ned mentioned in Fever once. It all clicks. Gods, our father died for this secret, in a way, Robb murmurs, realizing that had Robert known, he'd have killed Lyra without hesitation as a claimant to the Iron Throne. Lyra is the most affected. Her entire identity is thrown into question. She's not Ned's daughter at all, though raised as such, but rather the daughter of a legendary, doomed romance. I am a Targaryen's daughter? The Mad King's grandson, she whispers, shaking. Howland corrects gently. Rhaegar was not like his father, the Mad King. He was said to be a noble, intelligent man, though that likely rings hollow given Rhaegar's actions triggered war. Lyra's thoughts swirl. She's been taught to hate Rhaegar as the villain who kidnapped and raped Lyanna. Now to learn that he likely loved Lyanna and she loved him, and that Lyra is their child, it's overwhelming. Catelyn, regaining her voice, asks what this means for Lyra's status. Howland and Catelyn both know, if Lyra's true parentage is revealed publicly, many in Westeros would see her as a Targaryen princess, potentially a claimant to the Iron Throne, or at least a rallying figure for any remaining Targaryen loyalists. It complicates everything. Robb immediately declares that truth must be kept secret still. They can't have this spreading during war. But within the family, decisions must consider it. He kneels by Lyra, who is sitting in a daze, and takes her hand. You are my sister always. Blood or not, Father raised you as his own, and I love you as my own. That will never change. Lyra bursts into tears and Robb hugs her. However, now her potential marriages, or uses, shift dramatically. She's no longer just a useful pawn for Walder Frey or Doran Martell. She's potentially a queen in her own right, if anyone pushed her claim, or at least has a strong blood claim. Catelyn, ever practical, points out the obvious. If the Lannisters or Baratheons learned who she is, they would never let her live. Robert's ghost would demand her head. Even now, Stannis Baratheon claims the throne by blood right. Lyra's existence undercuts all of them, if legitimized by Rhaegar's prior marriage. Indeed, Rhaegar was married to Elia Martell, not Lyanna, so Lyra would technically be illegitimate by Westerosi law too, unless Rhaegar secretly annulled or polygamously married Lyanna as some theories go. But even as a Targaryen bastard, she'd have a claim if people supported her. Great bastards like Bittersteel and Blackfyre caused plenty of chaos historically. And there's also Daenerys Targaryen across the narrow sea with actual dragons now. One more Targaryen in play muddles that eventual confrontation. Robb sees a more immediate issue. Dorne, he says slowly. If we told Doran Martell that we have Lyanna and Rhaegar's daughter, a child of Prince Rhaegar and Princess Elia's own niece by marriage, would he ally with us? The Martells might see her as a link to Rhaegar's legacy, or they might hate her, since Rhaegar put Lyanna above Elia. It's a gamble. Doran Martell might be intrigued, but he had been secretly plotting to marry Arianne to Viserys before Viserys died, and later thinks of Arianne to Viserys' possible son Aegon. If Aegon Targaryen is real, Lyra's existence could either appeal to his desire for Targaryen alliance or complicate it. Catelyn interrupts firmly. We cannot send Lyra to Dorne now. This secret is too perilous. The fewer who know, the better. I would not trust it even to the Martells at this juncture. Robb agrees. Revealing it outside their inner circle could be catastrophic. Also, Walder Frey certainly can't know. He'd sell that information to the Lannisters in a heartbeat for favor. So, the plan to marry Lyra off is tabled, at least until they deal with Frey obligations. They resolve to keep Lyra's parentage hidden while moving forward carefully. One thing is clear. Robb feels he must legitimize Lyra as a Stark anyway, for a completely different reason. In the books, Robb, believing Bran and Rickon dead, and distrustful of any Lannister influence on Sansa, wrote a will legitimizing Jon Snow and naming him heir to Winterfell, Jon at the time being the only brother left he thought he could trust. In our timeline, who would Robb name? If Bran and Rickon are presumed dead, though they hope not, no proof of life yet, Sansa is captive, Arya missing. Jon Snow is a female, Lyra, and right here, loyal and beloved. Even before knowing her true heritage, Robb might have considered making Lyra his heir. Though a female heir is not ideal, it's better than nothing. Now after the reveal, Jon, Lyra, is actually not Ned's son at all, but still Ned's blood through Lyanna and of the Stark line. She's also technically not a bastard of Ned, but she is a bastard of Rhaegar, since no public marriage. That's complicated in lineage terms, but if Robb legitimizes her as Lyanna Stark, she becomes legally Ned Stark's daughter in the eyes of the North through royal decree, and thus his heir after Sansa Arya. Robb might do this in his will again. He convenes his top lords and likely says, "With my brothers gone and sisters out of reach, I will that Lyanna Snow be made Lyanna Stark, with all rights of blood, and succeed to Winterfell after me." This time Catelyn doesn't protest as violently as she might have years ago. She's been tempered by loss and guilt. She freed Jaime in a bid to get her daughters back, causing strife. She's seen so much tragedy. She might quietly say, "If that is your wish, your grace," bowing to her son's authority as king. But inside, she must accept that Ned's promise and honor make Lyra deserving. And at least Lyra's existence came from love, not betrayal. There's a poignant moment where Catelyn actually apologizes to Lyra. Perhaps not outright, "I'm sorry for hating you," but something along the lines of, "All these years I thought you were living affront to my marriage, but I was wrong. Ned never broke his vows. He was protecting his sister's child. You were a motherless girl who did nothing to deserve scorn. I misjudged you, and for that I ask forgiveness." This is a huge step for Catelyn. Lyra, emotional, might respond that Cat had every right to resent the situation, and that she always respected Cat as the lady of the house. This mutual understanding is healing. It doesn't instantly make them loving, but there's a newfound respect and even affection. As Lyanna Stark, name change official, she attends Edmure Tully's wedding to Rosalind Frey, when they proceed to the Twins for the peace with Walder Frey. However, now the Red Wedding looms. Does it occur the same way? Let's consider. Robb's still offended Frey. The plan is still to appease him with Edmure's wedding. Walder Frey, in league with Tywin and Bolton, still plans betrayal likely. Does Lyra's presence change anything? Possibly Walder Frey might be slightly mollified to see this pretty Stark girl offered to dance or even as a prospective match to one of his brood. But since Robb legitimized her and named her heir, Walder might actually resent that Robb elevated the bastard instead of just giving her in marriage humbly. If Walder doesn't know her Targaryen secret, he might think Robb's overvaluing her, or Walder might not care either way, set on vengeance and reward from Tywin. At the Twins, it's likely the Red Wedding still unfolds, perhaps even more tragically with Lyra present. During the slaughter, Lyra fights back. She might even save Catelyn from her demise by pulling her away when things go bad. In canon, Catelyn died, but maybe here Catelyn lives because Lyra dragged her under a table or something when the arrows started flying. However, saving Catelyn might mean Lyra herself gets gravely wounded or captured. One scenario, Arya isn't there to almost reunite, but Lyra is inside. When the massacre begins, Lyra sicks ghost on attackers and tries to protect Robb. Maybe she kills a Frey trying to stab Catelyn. But ultimately, Robb is shot multiple times by crossbows. Seeing her beloved brother about to fall, Lyra rushes to him. They could share a final moment. Robb, dying, murmurs, "Protect our family, my Queen of Winterfell." Robb always teased she'd be like a Queen of Winterfell with her commanding nature. Then Roose Bolton drives the sword into Robb, or kills him as in show, Jaime Lannister sends his regards. Catelyn might still kill Joyous Frey in madness as in canon, unless Lyra stops her. Let's say Catelyn is incapacitated by grief and gets knocked out by Freys instead of killed. Lyra meanwhile could be seized by Frey men-at-arms after a fierce fight. They wouldn't kill her outright if they know she's now heir to Winterfell. Tywin would want such a valuable hostage. But do they know? Perhaps ravens or gossip told of Robb's legitimization decree. If yes, Tywin would definitely instruct to capture, not kill Lyra. So likely she ends up a prisoner, bound for delivery to the Lannisters. Catelyn might also be captured alive, which changes her Lady Stoneheart fate, but that's another branch. However, Our scope probably ends around the reveal and immediate aftermath, not necessarily deep into post-Red Wedding. The user's framework seemed to intend climax at reveal, so maybe we don't detail the Red Wedding fully. We might instead hint at looming danger and how Lyra's new identity will influence events to come, possibly close on a somber or suspenseful note. With Robb's fate, and by extension the Stark cause, about to collapse, Lyra's true identity stands as both a beacon of hope and a grave new risk for the future. We can end with Lyra reflecting on her dual heritage, a wolf and a dragon, Stark and Targaryen. She might resolve to live up to both, the Stark honor and the dragon's strength, as she moves forward into an uncertain future where she must fight for her place and her family's legacy. In this alternate timeline, Jon Snow being born a girl utterly transforms the contours of the story. Lyra Snow, eventually Lyanna Stark, experiences the brutality of Westerosi patriarchy even more intensely than Jon did, because she cannot escape into the masculine world of the Night's Watch. Instead, she is enmeshed in the world of political marriages and court intrigue. We saw how her female presence altered key relationships. Her existence strained Catelyn and Ned's marriage in different ways, created new tensions, even King Robert's unwanted attentions, and gave Robb a different sort of confidant and political tool during the war. Lyra's path diverged from Jon's fundamentally, where Jon's arc was about forging his identity in the Night's Watch and embracing his destiny beyond the Wall. Lyra's arc is about survival and agency in a society that sees her as a pawn. Yet in both cases, the truth of their birth looms large. R+L=J, or in this case, Rhaegar plus Lyanna equals Lyra, still comes to light, but in a setting of southern lords and wartime councils rather than at the Wall or through mystical visions. The reveal changes how the remaining Starks see their role. With Lyra's Targaryen blood known to them, the Starks have a potential claimant not just to the north, but to the Iron Throne, if they dared press it. It raises fascinating questions. Would the North ever back a Targaryen claim through Lyra, given their history? Or would Lyra perhaps seek out her Targaryen aunt Daenerys and join forces in the future? The possibilities open up dramatically. One thing remains constant, however. Lyra is still a child of ice and fire. She has the wolf's blood of the Starks and the dragon heritage of the Targaryens. In this timeline, that dual identity becomes known to her much earlier, giving her a heavy burden to carry forward. Perhaps she will be the princess that was promised, or perhaps the knowledge will torment her as the war continues to rip her family apart. When we leave this story, the fate of Lyra Snow hangs in the balance. Her greatest challenge lies ahead, navigating a world that wants to either use her, marry her off, or destroy her. But one thing is certain. Lyra has proven she has the courage, intelligence, and resilience to defy those who underestimate her. She has survived being a bastard girl in a hard world, outlived the fall of her home, and risen from Snow to Stark. Should she survive the next rounds of war and political chaos, who knows what she might become? A queen, a kingmaker, or the one who unites Westeros against the coming darkness from the far north? A darkness that, without Jon Snow at the Wall, grows ever more perilous. Thus, the question, what if Jon was born a girl, leads us to a saga of a young woman who must fight for a place in a world that has none for her by default. It is a story of identity, both lost and found, and how a single change can cascade into a profoundly different narrative while still echoing the original's grand themes of honor, love, duty, and family. In the end, Lyra Snow's journey shows that no matter the road taken, the song of ice and fire plays on, familiar yet changed, with new harmony and dissonance, proving the tapestry of fate in Westeros is never fixed, but lives and breathes with each choice and each twist of destiny.